All right, thanks everybody. Let's call this meeting to order at 6:32. So first thing on the agenda, we have our confirmation of the agenda. So does anybody have any adjustments or modifications they'd like to make to the agenda? Okay, I have one change I would actually, or one addition I'd like to make, and it is a 6D. So under advocacy new business, just a I want to just give a current state of what the OTCAC looks like in terms of our like where we're at in terms of membership, and then probably request Mark's additions to that as well. So does anybody have any objections to adding a 6D to talk about like the state of members and just review that a little bit? So let's call it state of OTCAC. Okay, hearing no objections, we'll say 6D is going to happen. So any other modifications to the agenda? Okay, can I get a motion to approve the agenda then?
Motion.
Okay,
Make a
Mark.
motion.
Okay, Sandy second. All right, any objection to approving the modified agenda? Seeing none and hearing none, agenda is approved. All right, next is the March 28th meeting notes. So they were sent out over email. Does anybody have any modifications or changes they'd like made to the minutes? Okay, I agree. I thought they were quite detailed and good. So can I get a motion to approve the minutes? Okay, Andrew, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Stuart, thank you. All right, any objection to approving the minutes? Okay, hearing none, the minutes are approved. Thanks, everybody. All right, so we have a pretty full agenda tonight. So we're going to start off with a good, exciting topic. So first up is the status on the Odenton Mark Station parking garage. So we have John here. Thanks for joining us again, John. And so over to you.
Good evening, everyone. Hopefully everyone can hear me. It's my pleasure to be able to present just hopefully a very quick update on some of the efforts that have been underway since the last we spoke as it relates to the Odenton Garage project. The project team and I have been pretty diligently at work on several items. We've done some additional survey work and topography work, some additional utility coordination work, additional civil concept work, schematic design review and design comment responses and reviews with our public partners at both the county and the state level. And we've been coordinating with our traffic study engineers to help form some of our additional, call it civil work above and beyond just the, we'll call it footprint of the garage from that perspective. And I'll go through very briefly and kind of touch base on some of those efforts in a little bit more detail from that. And then if you have questions, please feel free to jump in and ask. One of the first items that been working with the project team on, which was of significant, we'll call it concern or interest from the Mark Train team, had to do with the first floor approach to the garage and how that first floor is going to relate to the actual station itself. Wanting to make sure that the corner next to the station was open, or the platform, making sure that the area closest to the platform was open, inviting and area enough to allow for circulation into the garage with as much ease as possible. And if we have share screen available, I can share what we kind of came up with as our approach. Is that allowable?
You should have, yep, there you go.
Excellent. So hopefully everyone can have a chance to see the screen here. So for context, the platform is right in this area here. This is the station south of here. And this is one of the main off-ramps from the platform and stairways from the platform here. This is we'll call it southeast corner of the garage. And I'm not sure if you can see this or not. I'll blow it up a little bit more here. Hopefully that makes it a little bit easier for everyone. So this is really the main circulating corridor where most passengers will be exiting off the ramp and off the stairs and entering into the garage, either into and through. And hopefully you can see my cursor here while I'm moving around. Is that everyone can see that? Okay. So the idea here is to make the entranceway as open and accessible as possible, including the bottom section here, so that folks that are exiting off the rampway or the stairwells can go right into the garage, either circulate up the stairs, up this way here to the second, third, and fourth areas of the garage, and or go right into the elevators. The other concern was making sure that this was open enough in the case of in the offhand that we do need to have an emergency evacuation at the platform off the train, that everyone from the train could exit and conceivably get under, let's say it's a rainy day or something like that, and they could actually get into the garage in pretty short order from that perspective. So informing that corner was really important, especially to the state and county partners from a safety and circulation perspective. And you can see that we've kind of grabbed a representative concept here of how the brick would look from that perspective on this side. That's part of the schematic approach that we've run into and walked through from that perspective. Questions on this, I'm going to move over to another slide to show a little bit more information on the first floor and some, we'll say, flow amenities we've adopted for that.
John, before you move,
Yes.
A quick question on the flow area you're pointing out. Are cars coming in and out of that area too?
No, I'll show you in one moment. I'll put this in as the larger context, okay, Martin. But I guess if we're taking this here as context here, the car flow is occurring over here, kind of this open nebulous space.
Okay, got it. All right.
So I'll stop sharing for 1 minute, unless there's other questions. Other questions about this?
I do have one quick question. So
yes.
in the image with the stairwell,
mm-hmm.
What else is happening in that empty space? Like on the different levels?
In this space here?
Like in the other levels higher up, like in that space there, yeah.
That's just a queuing space where passengers could come in and either queue up for the stairwell, exit the stairwells out into the parking
okay.
platforms, or queue up for the elevators from there.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, stop sharing for a moment here and pull up kind of the larger context. Now, what I'm going to show you next is the first floor layout with kind of active comments shown on it as soon as they load. Hopefully they do load in this version that I have. Oh, there we go. So to put this in its larger context, and hopefully, oh, there we go, helps if I hit the share button. There we go. So to see it in its larger context, here is the entirety of the footprint of the garage, and you'll see that we've added some notes in here on, we'll call it representative imagery, and some other comments that were made. That space that we were looking at right here was here. So this small corner. Again, you can see the platform, off-ramp, and the stairs here. Now, you'll notice, and I'll focus in on this, that we've made a couple changes. I'm going to start in the southeast corner and just kind of work my way fairly quickly through some of the major, we'll call it, tweaks or comments that we've incorporated here. So you'll see we still have retail included in our concept and approach. Some changes that we've made from a circulation perspective, and most of these are all driven by safety and convenience concerns. One, before we did show traffic flowing through this first floor into the kiss and ride area, we've now eliminated that, we'll call it as a kiss and ride spot, and turn this into a shuttle loop. What this enables us to do is be able to park 2 buses, at least 2 in this area, with queuing available. The reason for this is discussions on the county side about making sure that we are future-proofing the garage for the case of more resilient and more robust bus service ends up happening at the garage, that we have the infrastructure in place to be able to allow for that, as well as allowing for since we already know there is a bus that does service the garage area, enabling space sufficient enough for a bus to queue and one to drive past it. From that perspective, we close off this circulation area, which was open before, with some removable bollards, so that if we do need in an emergency case or other operational needs to be able to open this up, and you see the bollards are marked here. We added some additional bollards across the face of this parking area just to protect pedestrians from this flow. So again, if you're coming off of the platform, you can come down the ramp, off the stairs, no walls through here. You can walk unencumbered into the garage on the first floor here and continue walking through. We have, I think, a pretty substantial number of bicycle parking spots here. And then you'll see another cluster of these in the northwest corner of the garage too. So we felt that this also will enable, with the connector trail that will be coming in from over here, for bike passengers to be able to bike into this space, covered space, have their bicycles here, and then be able to go to the train. I'm going to back out of this for a moment here, just a little bit to give a larger context. You see that we have our ADA compliant van parking spots here, electric vehicle cluster in this area as well. And then the idea is we would augment, now that we have turned this into we'll call it a dead end, but it's a spot where you can come to the end, make a K-turn and drive back out. We want to make sure that customers are aware of that. So we've suggested we're going to here, before you drive down this way, to have a cluster of signs to indicate where the EV parking is, where your ADA parking is, and then the number of available parking spots is as well. So we thought that was a very important kind of approach from that perspective. Other, I think, notable first floor of suggestions or comments that we've backfilled in is, you'll see here again in the northwest corner. Again, this is the line of the garage. Now we've added another cluster of bicycles here, and then another smaller cluster of EV parking close to the electrical demarc rooms from there. Those are really the major kind of tweaks, we'll call it, to the schematic approach. Again, trying to outreach that we have good circulation in to the garage. We have good clusters of our EV and other amenity related spaces, and then more so the major concern being ensuring a good, clean access into the garage, unencumbered and safe. Any questions?
John, question for you about the kiss and ride loop.
Yes.
What's the maximum size of bus that you're currently planning for in that current loop?
I knew you're going to ask that question. I knew I should have. We did a study of it, and I would have to pull it up and answer you offline, Jason, on that, which I'm more than happy to. But we actually have a slide in our deck that I don't have it in my deck for presentation purposes. So I don't want to misspeak, but
that's fine.
I think the standard size is like 45 foot, 50 foot.
I believe that is correct, Martin. I believe it's 45, 48 foot bus, the standard size bus. So it wouldn't be able to accommodate one of the huge double stacked buses, but your standard larger size service bus would be able to come through that space.
Okay. No, I guess my question is more like, are you planning on like the touring style buses, like a Greyhound, that to allow Odenton to be kind of a transit stop for like, I don't know, at some point in the future, say commuting between some of the bigger cities like Philadelphia or New York? Would that be a possibility with the current kiss and ride plans, or is that not a current thought?
I would have to double check what the standard size of the Greyhound buses, but that 45, 48 foot range is really the swing radius. We do have a swing study that shows it, one being able to go through the whole entire kiss and ride loop from there. I see Abigail has her hand up.
Yeah, so if you were coming in from the northwest side on a bicycle and trying to reach those bicycle racks right there near the kiss and ride, what would be the path? Or is it you're imagining they're going to those bike racks that are already there on that northwest side.
So the northwest side, you would be able to travel along Town Center Boulevard here and pull into this entranceway and park here through this open space, open gateway and park right here.
And if those ones were full and you were trying to get to the other one, what would be the path they take?
There, you would then take the sidewalk here, in here, and enter right here.
Okay, and I know we brought this up previously of clarifying the bicycles and the sidewalk length, like will they be separated somehow, or they will just have to know bicyclists and pedestrians have like the typical sidewalk length?
Well, if there aren't any other questions on the first floor schematic approach, that's actually a great segue into a working progress that we have for the Town Center Boulevard cross section that I could jump to.
Okay.
Any other questions on this? What does RS stand for? By the EV spaces, it says RS in the red areas.
RS. Oh, is it these ones here?
Yeah.
Oh, reserved space.
Okay.
So there's a small pocket of reserved spaces here that's adjacent to the parking office from that perspective. It's a small cluster there.
Okay. And KAR?
Kiss and ride?
Yeah, kiss and
Okay.
ride spots. Those are the kiss and ride spots there.
Okay. 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 Just making sure we understand the nomenclature. Thank
Yeah,
you.
no problem. Sorry, that writing is so small that I can barely see it with my glasses. It must be time for an upgrade. If there are any other questions, that I will go ahead and jump to the Town Center Boulevard cross section. I know this was of interest. Now, I do want to say that this is still a work in progress. So, and we are doing this in consultation with our traffic study engineers as well. And my understanding is this is being informed by the current master plan overlays that we have for the area. And hopefully everyone should be able to see the screen now. All right, so we're looking at this, there's Town Center Boulevard, here's Duck-In Street, Town Center Boulevard, and we're kind of looking at this cross-section area right here, just ahead of this and the first entranceway into the garage off of Town Center Boulevard. So these cross sections here are kind of emblematic of of this space. This is probably really small, so I'm going to focus in a little bit so we can see it a little bit better. So bear with me for 1 second. So I'm going to scroll up a little bit so we can kind of see. Hopefully this will behave itself and we'll be able to see a little bit. So just bear in mind the top image is kind of what the existing conditions are, and I should be able to at least, give you an idea of what some of the proposed approaches are. So you see here that we are eliminating it. So we'll start from, I guess, my plan left over. You're going to see that there's similarities essentially for our first few zones on the far left hand side, and then we started making some tweaks or changes as we get across Town Center Boulevard closer to the garage side. This is the side where the garage would be located, just to orient everyone. So we're proposing removing the grass median in this space and creating a turning lane so that we'd be able to turn into the garage from there. We have another smaller lane that we are then using some of that space to create a bike lane. We'll have a planting area, seating area, and then a sidewalk area, then the garage from that perspective. Is the approach that we are kind of currently studying at this point in time. And my understanding is the bike lane and planting areas to keep bike path and pedestrians separated from one another with this kind of planted space or buffer area. Now, obviously, we're not showing any protection or any other versions of maintaining protection for the bikes in this image, but there is obviously an opportunity for fencing, for signage and other improvements to ensure that there is at least a visual demarcation along with the marking of the road for the bike pathway. Again, a working document.
I think that's good. This is Martin. I just say that, it encourages those who do want to ride a bike to be able to do that safely and encourages them to do that. So I think that's great.
I mean, I also want to keep in mind too, this is the Town Center Boulevard, cross section. We do have the pedestrian and bike pathway that will be running, we'll call it plan northeast as well, which is intended to be a connector to keep bike traffic, or a possibility for bike traffic to occur without any interaction with vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
Has this section been informed by a traffic study?
Yes. This was done, this is I'm going to call it collaborative, but our civil engineers worked with the traffic engineers. Actually, the traffic engineers that have been studying the Odenton town center area for the last decade.
Okay. I guess what I'm wondering is if there's enough lanes leading towards 175. I'm just thinking we're kind of adding an extra density of parking here and potentially a lot extra cars leading to 175.
Yeah, I believe the intent is once the garage, I'm just going to slide over here for a second. Once the garage becomes active, to block off the parking areas to the north and channel traffic into the parking lot areas. And I believe in conversations with the county and the state, the intent is that the private developer that will come as part of the TOD solicitation and develop the TOD site will also be, increasing the trip cap to that area, and that it will be incumbent upon them to work on the improvements that would be necessary from our intersection, the intersection of the garage north into 175, and then intersection at 175 to ensure that any implications that are addressed as part of their master plan and approach.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
For the location of that 15-foot sidewalk in the bike lane has, and this might be in your bigger diagram over to the left, I don't yet see how that's going to interconnect with the 4-foot or 5-foot sidewalk that's by the cemetery on the other side of Town Center Boulevard. It just seems like I'm worried you're going to have a sidewalk that basically just disappears.
Understood.
So, how are you handling that?
And you're Jason, you're referring to it connecting, I'm recalling
on the other side. So if you go to the other side, I guess north of your parking deck.
Okay.
Okay.
The side of Annapolis Road.
Oh,
Yeah, across the road.
across 175.
I don't even think this was looked at it.
Okay. Yeah, I see what you're doing here. You're basically taking that sidewalk and right angling it into the existing sidewalk so it'll carry upwards.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes. And so this would be setting the context for imagine, if you will, that from here north is the domain of the TOD developer.
Yep.
And so this cross section will basically set the precedent for them to carry forward with the rest of their streetscape. Now, I guess the question is, why aren't we doing that? And the answer to that is, by doing so, we want to allow flexibility for that developer as far as where where they might want to have additional curb cuts. They might want to move this entranceway. They might want to move it further north. They might want to, and probably will need to tie into utilities and other areas here. So kind of doesn't make sense to make one long, beautiful continuous streetscape to 175 that we know is going to get destroyed as part of the developers' initiatives and efforts from there.
So where does your scope of work stop?
Hello, Gordon. Sorry, Stuart. We have not had a chance to delineate that quite yet.
Yeah, because I think that's somewhat of a concern. And I understand not wanting to do something that might be destroyed. Totally agree with that. But I think, at some point I'd really like to know where that goes. I mean, if your traffic line and lane changes are where they're indicated, at least it should go to the corner. I know not crossing that artificial duckins coming into the parking garage area, because what is north of that will probably get destroyed. And if a little bit of the south part does, but look, we know it's going to be years before anything's done. And at least for years, let's let it look good. That same argument was made for where flats at 170 were, where the state was doing sidewalks, and everybody said, well, it's going to be redeveloped really soon. And that was in 2005. And that hasn't gone too well. So the sidewalks are there for the convenience of everybody. And I think to what Jason's saying, even continuing to Annapolis Road, if it's a temporary situation, being enough new curb and sidewalk there for people to safely go to the intersection, cross, because the parking lot's on the other side, the north parking lot. So that would be one concern. The other thing is, Andrew, I think, was getting into it, and it maybe wasn't conveyed. And there's 2 lanes being created for inbound traffic, which we all know is about a similar time during the day. And the outbound traffic, there's only 1 lane with a similar flow of traffic going out. And there's a concern of that getting really bottlenecked, which has been a problem, as it is. It seems like something could be done, with how many feet on the bottom was it? You got 11 feet, and then you got a 15-foot planting area and 4-foot bike area. It just seems like I don't know. You got to decide whether you want the walkway or you want an extra lane coming in and out for traffic. And I'm not sure which is right or wrong. You've obviously done your traffic studies, but I just want to echo that comment. I know that one of the intentions of the Odenton Town Center plan and the CIP is to have Duckins Boulevard be used as an artery out rather than Town Center Boulevard for those going west on Annapolis Road with a traffic control at Baldwin. So I know this is a long-term plan. I don't even think it's anything you need to worry about initially, but I just echo the same small concern. A garage, there's always been traffic there. You're never going to solve a traffic problem with a garage in this tight of a space unless you make the garage smaller. Okay, I mean, that's the only way, or slide it back a little bit. That's the only way you're going to accomplish that. And I think that ship sailed, and that's okay. I know you've done your traffic studies. Just pointing that out. Study and reality are sometimes 2 different things.
Yeah, I mean, you make, I think, some very valid observations from that perspective, and you can see that we're increasing the size of the planting area, or at least sliding the area of the planting out here, which I believe is part of the plan for the overall town centers, to kind of create this kind of lusher environment and more inviting kind of true boulevard kind of environment where you have that tree coverage aspect. And so there isn't a ton of real estate to play with over this span, which has been, I would say, part of the challenge why we're kind of still noodling through it.
But there are 2 lanes on the exit on 175, right? One's a right-hand turn lane and then one's.
Yes, I believe that's correct. I don't think the plan here goes that far up.
Yeah, so that
once it comes out of there. Okay, okay, like I said, you've done your studies. I just am somewhat pointing it out. I think there's 15 feet to play with. I know I would be. You got 15 feet and then you got 15 more feet. So you got 30 feet. I don't know where anywhere in the town center plan it calls for 30 feet.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I guess one of the factors here, and it's kind of outlined a little bit in the
Mhm.
hashed line, is there are BG&E or sorry, electrical poles that run the entirety of the Town Center Boulevard area, and there
I
are
mean, high wire poles or
just medium voltage distribution that runs down the street here. And I think part of the issue that we're running into is we also need to maintain a 10-foot right of way on either side of that pole in
okay, well,
order.
you didn't. That's a very good reason. And look, to my committee, shame on me, but that's the difference between one dimensional, okay, was showing this on a plan, and 3-dimensional knowing and being on the site, and how you really can't modify it because of the site condition. You really can't, in trying to achieve and accomplish the same thing. So got it, understand, remember that.
Yeah, we looked at what the cost would be to try to move those underground or move them all together. And it's pretty prohibitive.
Got it. Got it. I did it across the street. You don't have to tell me.
Understood.
Yeah.
Any
But
other?
this is kind of a marquee development in a very high profile area. Wouldn't that be a good reason to spend the money to bury those wires?
They're buried already. I think it's just moving them.
Yeah, they're underground.
They're not high voltage lines above. They're the streetlights, aren't they?
No, they are they're poled electrical. So they're above ground on poles.
Then I disagree. Got to take them down. Totally take them down. I would have to if I was a private developer doing that project. We've talked to it about around here about getting those light poles down and bearing utilities.
I think Andrew's.
I'm just going to
correct
say
about
that
too.
I'm a proponent for, now that I better understand it. Again, I agree with Andrew and I agree with Martin. And you got to find a way. I don't care if it costs more money. It's just a visual thing now that you're planting this beautiful treescape, but you have all these poles coming out. Let's do half the treescape, take the poles down. And then you got some more room for roadway, which I personally think is necessary given the additional traffic, the additional flow by the developer next door.
I would disagree with that. I think the plan that shows this 15-foot planting area has a lot to that space. You have a lot of concrete, a lot of brick, a lot of hot surfaces. That's a really nice addition. So I think the fact that you've got 2 exit points at 175, I mean, it is what it is today. It's no different than it was today. So, yeah, I'd vote for keeping this as it is, but I would agree that the high tension lines or the power lines, where they are, don't need to be there. That's yeah, bury those things.
Yeah, I also agree with Martin on that. I actually really like how this is laid out. I do have a quick question about the bike lane, and I generally do not ride on the road in bike lanes because they scare me. So I don't know this. This feels like kind of a stupid question, but would someone on a bike be able to ride in both directions in this one bike lane that's proposed? Or is this only for folks that are heading towards 175? And on the other side, they would be riding in the street.
Good question.
Yeah, it's I would assume that it would be dual purpose at 4 feet, but that would make it fairly narrow from that perspective.
It could
So
be on the sidewalk.
So yeah, I feel like that's something that still needs to be looked at a little bit.
Yeah, I'm marking that down here. Thank you.
If that street has a pretty low speed limit, so if we're looking for the idea of space potentially, then I wonder if it's okay for this one that it's a shared car bike lane.
I mean, if you're coming from 175 in and you have that parking loading lane there, that's not super safe to ride past on your bike in the street, because then you have people that are potentially parked and then opening their car doors. So that's my concern with that for bicyclists.
So one thing I guess I would ask always is, are we improving what's there now? So we do have a parking lot now, doesn't matter whether it's vertical or horizontal. How do bikers get there? And is this a safer solution? I guess that's what I would consider. And I don't know the answer. I'm just trying to.
They're on the sidewalk, I would say, because
Yeah.
that's the safest solution for crossing 175 from the lane or from the path that's on the other side and then coming down. Or they're schlepping their bike up the stairs
Well, there's,
underneath 175.
yeah, I mean, there's a 12, is that a 10-foot sidewalk or is that 15? It's 15-foot sidewalk there.
Well, I think part of the not to interrupt, I apologize. But I think part of the intent of the pedestrian, the multi-use pedestrian bike pathway is to channel traffic, bicycle traffic to that space and away from cars altogether, and try to keep that completely separate from one another. With this being, I would call it incidental usage or what have you, but a secondary path. But I think in its larger context, that's the idea and intent of the pedestrian and bike path, is to channel bike and pedestrian traffic away to a much more wider approach that's far safer than intermingling it close to moving traffic.
So I think that point is actually really, really important. I'm a little bit worried about this design. I'm going to echo a little bit of what Martin and Stuart and Colette and Abigail have been talking about. Keep in mind that when people are taking the train from DC and coming back out, they have worked a full day. They've ridden a train back to Odenton and they're hopping in their car to drive home. And the likelihood that we will see people get hit by cars is the highest right around this parking deck. And so I am concerned right now with where that bike lane is located with a single lane of egress. I'm concerned about that because people are going to queue up. They're going to get frustrated. They're going to get angry. They're going to make more mistakes. So I think it's really important to realize just human nature here. You have a lot of cars coming in. You have artificially limited the amount of ways and space on the road for people to get out, which is going to cause people to get angry. And I think it's important to keep that in mind whenever you're looking at this spacing. And I'd say I would definitely fairly balance taking some of this sidewalk and planting area and putting in another egress lane, because you're reducing queuing, you're reducing stress and basically road rage. And I think it's important to balance that against the green space and the cost and figure out like what's the best plan forward and give the county different options. But keep in mind like residents' temperament on this one. I think it's really, really important here. Over.
Well, putting an extra lane in there is not going to help because you still have 2 lanes at the intersection of 175. So it doesn't really matter. I mean, people may be queuing in a line, but you put an extra lane in there, they're just queuing an extra lane. It doesn't.
I think also it promotes the idea that people will speed more versus, like, we already know if there's more lanes, people will go faster versus fewer lanes, more likely to go slower. So that I think that is what could cause more likelihood of a accident than having more lanes where people are trying to maneuver more.
Well, it's a fairly short distance to get any speed, but one thing I'm looking at here, you have parking and loading, and I know it's existing on the side where the Village at Odenton Station is, but that's elevated right there. So there's really no loading from over there that I'm aware of. Loading can be certainly done on Duckin Street in front of, and there's no other people that would be getting loading that I'm aware of. There's maybe 3 or 4 parking spaces before you get to the entrance of the parking garage behind the Village at Odenton Station. So you know, and there shouldn't be any parking or loading all the way up to Duckin Street because there just isn't any, I mean, to 175. So it seems like you can gain 8 feet there for whatever you want to use it for as more travel and get rid of the loading and parking there. It's just, I don't think it's necessary, but I may be wrong. Okay, maybe Ruth Chris needs it. That's the only place they can load and unload. But I'm just suggesting that, again, it's a situation where the storefront is elevated from there, so there is no storefront on that street. You'd have to go around the corner onto Duckins before you get to a level location.
I think that's an interesting observation. What are the thoughts about what if we were to eliminate the bike lane altogether from this approach and drive bike traffic through signage to the pedestrian bike pathway and have it travel away from the garage its entirety?
You mean a different route there, John?
Not sure I understand, John. Yeah.
Well, right now we're showing a bicycle lane along Town Center Boulevard. What if we were to direct bicycle traffic out to the pedestrian bike lane or bike pathway up this way? So it would go and travel up under the bridge to under 175 and travel that way out of the site. Then you would travel, I guess, if you're coming into the site, you could come into the station area here and into the travel into the neighborhood rather than mingling it with Town Center Boulevard.
I think anybody's going to go wherever they want, no matter what we do, or no matter what you do, or if you put a bike lane there, or what. There's the bike police aren't there. If they want to ride on the sidewalk and that's convenient, I think that's what's going to happen. And in reality, I just.
But I do think it is. So I want to make sure we move on. So I'm going to give everybody a chance to make a final comment. But to answer your question, John, I think it's a good thought to think about, because going underneath the road, you don't have to wait for a traffic light and wait for traffic. And so if you make it such that the bicyclists don't have to climb up and down those stairs to go under 175, where they can just pedal straight from the parking deck right to the hiker biker trail on Town Center Boulevard, not having to stop at any lights and take a break, I think you are likely to get bicyclists to take that route because it is way more convenient than having to stop and wait for traffic. That, like, just honestly, like, that's human nature.
Yeah, I agree with Jason on that, but those steps need to go for that. Because
Yes.
those steps are incredibly prohibitive and very difficult to schlep your bike up and down.
Okay.
But all right, so we're gonna have to move on. So John, anything else? If not, I want to let the committee members have each one to have a final comment, if nothing else.
I had a few other items just to touch on really quickly, but I don't necessarily have to. We have we have kind of an informed temporary parking approach that we have collected, the public partners have agreed upon as far as how we're going to approach while the garage is being built, where to locate ADA parking spaces and other accessibility spaces, which will connect to via a ramp the pedestrian bike pathway that would get folks to the south platform and access to the platform itself. So we've informed that space. I'm not sure if you want me to touch base on that now. I can always touch base on that later on when I show the overall site approach, which is also fine too. I just know that we are connecting, making that connection from that perspective and making improvements to the parking spaces north of that wetland buffer area, north of where the garage would go, with the intent of that being the space where ADA and bus routes could go. So you could still have drop off, you could still have a clear and compliant pathway to the platform to be able to service customers while we are interrupting that flow through construction.
Okay, would it be possible for you to come back next month with a specific focus on those two items?
Sure. Yeah, and I think the only other item I would say is we have identified and we will be issuing the necessary notifications as it relates to some very minor wetland buffer not in the wetland, but the wetland buffer zone. There are several locations where we will be, at least the way the plans are shown, where the current wetland surveys are, that we will be impeding and infringing upon the wetland buffer areas, not in the wetlands again, but in the buffer zone areas. The wetlands have a 25-foot buffer zone around them, and there are 2 spots that we've identified some minor encroachments on. But I think that'll be a larger public meeting that we would like to kind of interlock with this meeting too, and have it correspond with this meeting, probably the July meeting that you have. But that being said, I know I want to be sensitive to time. I appreciate everyone's time and effort, your questions too. I know that we'll have probably one more round of questions here.
Jason, one more question maybe I can ask. John, I don't know if you've given any more thought to the facade of the garage. There were some discussions on that many months ago, I think. Any more feedback on that?
Yeah, I believe when we spoke last, we had discussed, we'll call it a kind of a classic red brick approach to the garage. That seemed to be the consensus across the board from that perspective.
I don't think it was it?
Well, that's the approach that public partners, based on some of the feedback we received from your group, some of the feedback from the public partners as well, that garnered the most support from there. And I do have some examples of that. I think for those of you that were on the last time I presented, I can show really quickly, but they're I wouldn't call them a high resolution model or rendering, which we do have, but let me share it before. I believe last time around there was some discussions about it, but this is just a panel cross section here, and then this is the southwest corner, as if you were across Town Center Boulevard looking northeast.
Yeah, I think we had presented a number of options. I think maybe it was Abigail, I'm not sure who. But there were a bunch of other considerations, because this looks like a warehouse, a canning district in San Francisco or something. I don't know that this would fit the vision for Odenton. I don't know why this was picked. Why was this selected? What does this do? It's just red brick.
It's a parking garage. End of story.
It doesn't matter if it's a parking garage. It's a building, a huge one.
I mean, I think what we talked about, I recall the red brick, I recall the tan brick or gray brick to distinguish the openings for the entrances to the garages. That's sort of what I remember. This corner here is just a stairwell. The opening that you spoke of, or that you showed from the other perspective, is in the corner here.
Yeah, that would be in the
is
corner in the southeast corner.
And Martin, I don't 100% disagree with you. I don't. But I think we'll have that time now, later on. This is so far from our last time coming back and having input and community meeting and all that. I'm not 100% disagreeing. I'm not. At the end of the day, it is a parking garage, but I get what you're saying and the perspective and the scale of it.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, so we can get on that. I mean, I'm more concerned at this point of timing. I mean, when is this thing? Because this is the 4th time. So this is the furthest we've been. I know it's under state and county control, but can we talk a little bit real quick about the timing schedule at this point?
Yeah, it's yeah, most certainly. I mean, I guess one of the items you mentioned about burying the electrical poles, I did note the potential cost implications of that, but the timing implications of something of that degree would also be significant. But without that as part of the approach, and based on where we are with the current schedule and reviews that occurred, we're anticipating this project being done the first quarter of 26. Now there's room for improvement on that, but that's what we're forecasting right now.
Okay, thanks, John. So I want to give each committee member a time to make a final comment. So Andrew, any final comments for John?
I just wanted to say that I like the glass corner on the southeast corner of the
Mhm.
building. I think it has the potential to create something interesting and dynamic from the train station side. I think that sort of glass canvas could be a good opportunity to create kind of an interesting visual graphic design on the glass through like pretty glass or some sort of other kind of glazing coverage, or even using vertical fins to add some color and depth to that facade too. That would, you know, be interesting to look at while riding by.
Thanks,
Also,
Andrew.
I was curious, what phase of design is this project in right now?
Design development.
Yeah, I mean, this is the time to be changing the look of the building. Just tacking on to Martin's comment.
Thanks, Andrew. All right, Colette.
I really appreciate the green space, how that's been done so far, just on that one rendering, and the pedestrian sidewalk and the bike path. I really appreciate that those things are being brought in. Yeah, I'm excited to see how this continues to progress.
Thank you.
Thanks, Colette. Sandra.
I like what I see. And I'm also a proponent of burying utilities.
Thanks, Sandra. Abigail.
Two comments. So piggybacking of what Stuart said of that parking loading dock lane, I think there's the potential it might cause competition with the kiss and ride, where if there is a line waiting for people getting in and out, if you take like an Uber or a Lyft, people are more likely to stop there, and then people are maybe going to be less likely to use that kiss and ride. So I think I'm also a proponent of potentially reconsidering whether to have that lane. And then in terms of the aesthetics of the parking garage, I don't know if it comes in through that pre-design or developer or pre-design conversation, but the idea of maybe the county does a partnership or with local artists or an art oriented group in the county, like the Chesapeake Arts Center, to have like a local artist do mural or something project on the facade or the glass, like Andrew was suggesting.
Yeah, there are a couple of opportunities or spaces that we have identified as potential community art installations, one of which is near the bicycle parking near the shuttle area. There's a large wall space there that's on the outside of the office, the east side of the office, and then some other space there that could become potential art space from that perspective. And we've kind of highlighted that as something to bear in mind for opportunity purposes. So I think that's a good point.
Great.
Thanks, Abigail. Don.
I joined late, but don't have any comments.
Thanks, Don. Martin.
Just agreeing with the art idea. Again, I've mentioned it maybe many times already, but the Annapolis Town Center has a huge mural. Just an idea to consider, but I like the art idea. So thanks, Abigail, for suggesting that. That's all for me.
Thanks, Martin. Stuart.
Yeah, I would assume that the Lyft and the Uber, I've never kissed my Uber or Lyft driver, but are they going to be dropping off at the kiss and ride, since that was brought up by Abigail? The mural, there's an incredible mural that was inside of the Nevermore factory that has been preserved. It is looking for a home. It's going to take quite a few dollars to do, but I think it would be well worth it, and it might be something to consider. I know where it's being kept and it just needs to be preserved. I don't know if anybody remembers some of the folks that have been around here for a long time, or maybe have worked at Nevermore. When you walked into the lobby, the in the round mural that was there, it's quite awesome. So that's something to look at. And that's about it. I think it looks great. Martin's comment when looking, Maybe changing some of the brick colors. I know this is expensive, but even doing a pop out of 6 inches every once in a while of the brick to give it some definition might break up the long stretches of sameness. So that's all I got. Really good job. Let's get it built. Thank you.
Yeah, the photos of the facade don't show the dimensionality of it. There is some texture and dimensionality to it when you look at the proposed kind of elevation in a little bit more detail.
Thanks, Stuart. Okay, and then final comments from me. Again, thanks for coming, John, and giving us this little bit of this glimpse, and then we look forward to seeing more. Obviously, you are hearing there's lots of feedback. Hopefully, you take that in and factor it in with all the other feedback that you're hearing. So thank you for that. Thank you for the opportunity. And then just to echo, I think the committee gave a lot of good insights and thoughts on this. And so just definitely think about how the parking deck has to fit for Odenton into the future. And that's really, I think, what I would leave with is like it's going to be a central point for cars and people. And so we have to make sure that everything merges and meshes well, because the goal is for this to have people come to Odenton. They can basically park here and go to other parts of our Odenton by walking. And so we want to make sure we have it such that people can get in and out to find what Odenton has to offer and what we'll have to offer over the next future plan. So we look forward to hearing more from you. Thanks for all these updates. Appreciate it. And then look forward to seeing you again. So thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. So thanks, everybody, for good discussion and comments. So next we have developer presentation. I see that we have Mr. Michael Corey here. I'm assuming you're going to be the one presenting because you're on the agenda. So it's the Mead Center. So over to you.
Great. Thank you. Also on the call is Jim O'Hare, the developer of the project. So I guess we'll get started. Let me share. Okay, so we're in front of you again with this project. The last time we were in front of the Odenton Town Center Committee was, I believe, in 2017. But we're back in front of you again because we are revising the previously approved layout of a single 2-story building with first floor retail and second floor office space with a single 10,380 square foot retail building, which is this one, and a single story 2,250 square foot restaurant with drive-through, which is this building. The site layout is using existing parking from the first phase development with a 18 space reduction because of the reduced need from the reduced square footage of the revised layout. Excuse me, proposed landscaping on site is fairly similar to the previously approved layout with some modifications to the new restaurant building. But we are proposing that everything on site will be at least 50% native species, with all interior trees being 100% native species. The buffers on the site are being held and are following the approved modification number 13.314, which reduced some of the buffers around the site because of site constraints, mostly utility easements along Annapolis Road and some overhead power lines along Berger. The activity space and green areas on the site, let's go back to the color exhibit because it shows a lot better. Activity spaces would be considered the sidewalks along the parking areas, which are expanded for more pedestrian flow. The larger entryway plaza area, which is in this kind of corner of Berger and Annapolis Road with benches, a more architectural staircase leading up. And the green areas, as you can see, are kind of along the frontage, perimeter and interior landscape or islands for landscaping. Setbacks for the larger retail building are 35 feet off Annapolis Road, and those are driven off of, there is a 12-inch water line with easement along the frontage, so we are probably like 3 or 4 feet beyond that. Bicycle and pedestrian amenities. I kind of brought up the benches before. We've also talked about adding a couple more benches along the doorways, kind of outside of the retail areas, and adding proposed bike parking kind of in the interior of the site that would kind of provide bicycle parking for both lots 1 and existing lot 2. And then signage and lighting. Signage would be along the frontage on Annapolis Road. They would have to be either wall signs or pole mounted hanging signs because of the utility easement, and we didn't want to disturb that or have the risk of the signs having to be removed in case of a utility replacement. And site lighting is mostly existing along Maryland 175 and Berger. There are Cobra lights, and the interior lighting are traditional kind of those style lights. As you can see, these are the different, and this is the site as of a few years ago, and it's pretty similar today. Get back to,
So Michael, while you're
yeah,
on to the next one, is the footprint size the same in this revision that you had?
no, it is a reduced footprint.
Reduced footprint.
So the previous layout, as you can, is this.
Okay.
So it's this entire
Mhm.
building, and with the new layout, you can see there's a lot more green space in between, and a little bit more up front.
Michael, this is Martin again. Another question about the drive up portion for this restaurant.
Yes.
Did you select it just out of curiosity because there's no room for parking, or is it the kind of restaurant you're expecting to put there?
So, and Jim might have a better explanation to this, but we've removed the office portion of this project because previously it was approved prior to COVID, and since then that need has really been, as we all kind of know, that has been removed. So based on that, it could have just been all the same style of retail, or adding this restaurant drive-through kind of gives the site a little bit more flexibility. And Jim, I don't know if you want to expand on that any further, or.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. This is Jim O'Hare. I'm the developer. So and just so everyone is familiar with the site, we've actually built the entire parking lot, and this is where the All American Steakhouse is located. And they're a tenant of ours, and they've been open for maybe 6 or 7 years now. But the change away from office was really, as Michael pointed out, demand initiated, and so that eased our parking burden. We also had under the old plan something like 16 or 17,000 square feet of of retail. We felt like that was too much. And we do not have a restaurant or drive-through tenant identified at this point, but we do believe that there's demand for a drive-through at that location.
So we're saying restaurant, but given the drive-through, are we assuming a fast food chain?
I think it's unlikely that it would be, because we don't have a stoplight. I don't think that we'll get, we're gonna have like McDonald's or Burger King or that type of fast food use. I would hope for maybe a coffee shop.
Is there any conversation potentially of likely of it being like a small business, or it's most likely going to be a chain?
You know, I think looking at the market, I think it's hard to predict. I would tell you that we have had initial discussions with Starbucks and they passed. And we have, and this confidential, but we're having continuing, I should say, discussions with a startup coffee company that is a small business. And I expect our tenants likewise in the retail center will be local businesses and not national chains.
Okay. Yeah, I think that would be great, just because there's not many, I'd say, small businesses in the area, and it could be a great opportunity to build the idea of what is character in Odenton. And then in general, it's a hard street, that area, especially seems like businesses have struggled, and with the base, there's a lot of potential. So I imagine some early soldiers would appreciate like drive-through on the way.
We would love to provide them with like local businesses to come, local coffee shop, a dry cleaner, that type of retail need. So that is our goal.
That's great.
Do you have more of your presentation? I want to make sure you have time to get through your presentation.
Yeah. So we just have a few more kind of things to cover from the checklist. The architectural renderings. Let's see, we'll do the big retail building first. Multicolored, kind of spell out the different tenants easily. And the drive-through, the same color. And I believe these are pretty close to the steakhouse colors. So that the whole site will match very well. I'll bring up the landscape plan one more time.
Where's the steakhouse, Michael, again?
So steakhouse is back in this back corner. Come from a different. Yeah. So the steakhouse would be covered partially by the new retail on this front pad.
Yeah, well, it's not, the steakhouse is not especially visible though currently from the street. So they are anxious actually to have the rest of the development built.
So Jim, I'm not familiar very much with this area. What is there now? Is it just a vacant lot with trees?
No. Yeah, so if you look at the site plan, you can see on lot 2 on the far right of the site plan, that building is constructed. It's a 6,000 square foot All-American Steakhouse. So that's a local Baltimore-based chain. I think they have maybe 8 or 9 restaurants around Baltimore and DC. They've been open and operating for 6 years. So the entire parking lot that you see has been constructed, and where we would build the retail strip center in the drive-through, that is essentially a constructed pad site. So the utilities, stormwater, everything is in and it's ready to go.
I see. Okay.
Sidewalks are in. So, and
Okay.
if you're, to locate you to the, I don't know the directions there, but to the bottom of the page is a Verizon retail store. And to the upper part of the page is a new car wash that was just constructed
Yeah,
on 175.
right.
Okay. Yeah, let's let them proceed and finish their presentation, please.
Okay. Okay, so brought up the landscape plan. Street trees are proposed. Foundation plantings. They will meet the 50% foundation planting requirement. We're gonna have to do a little bit more up on this front area and kind of make that adjustment, but it's feasible with this site. There is proposed sidewalk along Annapolis Road. And then there's going to be an ADA ramp kind of in this back area to kind of flow through the site and give another access option to the front of retail. And let's see, the final things. At this time, we're not proposing any bonus program requests. And other than a modification to combine preliminary and site development plan through Anne Arundel County, we are not proposing any additional modifications other than the ones that have already been requested and approved for this site.
Okay, so just to clarify that for the committee, so yeah, so there were a number of modifications that you had previously sought with the previous design. You received approval for those, and those modifications still apply to your current proposal, and you are not coming back to revisit any of those modifications or request any new modifications with this revisit to the committee. Did I hear that correct?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure that was clear for the committee. Thank you.
And with that, I think we've covered all of the bases. So if you have any questions for Jim or I.
Okay, so as always with OTCAC process, the committee will get a chance to answer questions first, and then we'll bounce over to the public, where the members of the public can ask questions as well. So I will start off to see if any committee members have questions.
Yeah, not as much a question as a minor comment. And I've seen this before other places, that drive-through going around the building the way it is, that can make it challenging for pedestrians coming from lot 1 into the building, where you have to cross over the drive-through or kind of walk around to the front. And people in the drive-through are probably paying more attention to where they are in the queue and less attention to pedestrians. So just a little tricky, but I don't think there's much to be done for it.
I think that's a good comment. We will work on a plan to make sure there's a safe crosswalk from the parking lot to the front entrance.
This is Stuart. Don, I agree with your comment there. The one thing that helps though is even though it's separating the 2 lots, it's really one parking field. So people are going to be going out the other entrance and heading west more than likely. I think it'll be okay, but it is something that needs to be addressed, at least for signage. Only other thing I can mention, and if that's the way it is, that's great, no problem. The 5-foot sidewalk in front of the building. So there is a sidewalk between the retail that would be accessible. I could see people just walking across the grass right to your little sidewalk there into the individual spaces. I mean, that's just human nature. And it's only a 5-foot sidewalk where we have much larger sidewalks elsewhere. I know this isn't in the town center, it's outside the core, and 5-foot standard, I understand that, but just understanding that that's probably what's going to happen. You're going to develop grass traffic patterns and maybe addressing the opportunity in here for people to cut from that main sidewalk directly to the storefronts rather than going all the way to the corner and then back in.
Yeah, also a very good comment. I think what we need to do is provide a crosswalk across the drive lane that would also continue through the grass area to the parking lot at that end.
Yeah, so that's one thing. And the only other thing, it's just a comment too. Just everybody in the committee. It's very difficult to build new spaces for small local tenants. It's just math. It really is. And to get a 8% return with all the risk, I needed to get $50 a square foot in Odenton Town Center, plus common area and taxes. So you're over $60 a foot, and only nationals can pay that. It's just the reality, just like everything else is so expensive. And people are having a hard time, the retailers and developers, they're having a hard time too. Read the newspaper, look at the statistics. So it's very, very difficult. The advantage these guys have, and they might be able to at least, let's call it a discount, is because they've had the property for so long. So the basis for that property is a little bit less when you figure it in. The value's not. I mean, so I'm just cautioning everybody, anywhere that anything's developed, please understand that we would love to do small spaces. I have Savage Mill. I have 80 small tenants there. Okay, 80 small local tenants. There's nowhere else that can has that concentration of small tenants. And we're 100% full because, you know, we can provide value to them, but it's very, very difficult. So I want to do it. Jim wants to do it. Other developers want to do it. It's tough. It really is. And it's a math. I'd be happy to sit down with anybody, anytime, go through the development, just see, so you understand. That's all. But this looks good. I think you guys have done a good job in scaling it back and taking advantage of a little bit more green space and parking. You have plenty of parking based on the square footage. So appreciate it.
Thanks, Stuart. Any other comments from the committee?
Yes, this is Martin. Whenever we look at these kinds of projects, we do have to consider the environment, and we do have to consider the fact that we do have climate change. So with that in mind, I noticed there's a lot of green space around here, as best as you can do it. So that's good. But with regard to energy efficiency and use of energy, have you considered solar somewhere on these buildings?
Yes, so I'll tell you, I put solar on many of my projects whenever I can make it work economically. And the issue arises that if you have ownership of the let's say a strip center like this, the tenants, and you put solar panels on, it's hard to link those solar panels into tenants' meter, and they don't want to pay for it.
Got it. What about the restaurant?
The restaurant is a possibility depending on who that is. And one thing I've done is a smaller amount of solar that will be tied to the meter, that the common area meter. But even that, like, we have super high efficient LED lights, and so we just don't use that much electricity. But we will, I'll put in solar wherever I can. The other thing that we've done is we installed, when we built the parking lot, we installed a Bay Saver stormwater management system that we clean out regularly. So it just got its 5-year certification, so it filters all the water as it runs off the parking lot.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jim. Hopefully, this solar can gain some more support and you can make it work somehow, maybe on the restaurant building.
We'll give it a shot.
Okay.
There's some other things for the heat island of the rooftops, making sure it's white surface instead of black surface. If there's any way for the parking lot to have like lighter tone versus the dark black asphalt for just the cement, like anywhere you can lighten or whiten surfaces so it's less absorption.
Yeah, our parking lot is existing, so it's been built, but it does include some lighter areas that are permeable. You know, wherever those types of programs, we'll pursue them whenever it's possible. And even if it's just, you know, revenue neutral, we would do it just because I like the technology.
Has there been any conversations on the, like, or I don't know if it's a study to see how likely it is that people from that restaurant will be potentially walking to this business of easy, I guess people can easily walk through the parking lot to get from that steakhouse restaurant to the new area that will have that drive-through?
Yeah, well, we mentioned, so I think based on the committee's feedback, we will modify the access to the drive-through restaurant. But other access is people are going to come to this location by car and park in the parking lot and then walk. We're right up, we face up to 175. And so I don't know that I just don't see many people walking down that section of 175. But access, you know, access from the parking lot into the retail and the drive-through, you know, is very important to us.
Thanks, Abigail. Any other comments? Okay, so I have a few questions and comments. Number one, can you indicate what direction the drive-through is proposed to be? Is it clockwise or counterclockwise? Okay,
It is a counter, yes.
okay. All right, so yeah, that was and then all right, and then the entrance from Burger is still proposed to be two-way then, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right, and so the how are you, do you believe you're going to have any type of queuing issue with your drive-through loop being full, and because you are so close to the entrance with Burger Street that you're basically going to end up with people blocking the entrance so they can't actually get into the Lot 1 parking lot because of queuing?
So we've done preliminary stuff looking at for some vehicle turning, going in, coming out of the drive-through, and queuing within the site and what would happen if queuing came out on the Burger. We can get almost 12 cars within from pickup to just kind of approaching out into the parking lot. And then it would take 24 cars to go from pickup window out to Burger Street and become an issue where it would back up into Annapolis Road. And that's just if they come the Burger Street entrance only. So we have looked at that, and those I've seen queuing studies for Starbucks, which would be a higher load than this one if it's more local. And they typically are like 22 cars for their queue. So if that becomes an issue, there is also the parking lot where we could somehow send them through so that they're not queuing onto the streets. Especially because if this is going to be a coffee shop, you know, the parking lot around the restaurant would not be used in the morning typically. So there's a lot more kind of freedom within the site with the multiple uses.
That answer is excellent, because the sheer fact that you've thought about how you could use the lot to absorb the queue, very smart. That was exactly what I wanted to hear, because if you didn't say that, I was going to suggest it. So a great answer on that one. I very much appreciate that. Number two, I'm a little bit iffy on like where you said your ADA access is going to be, to basically say if someone is on a wheelchair, on a motorized wheelchair riding in from Annapolis road, they would have to go all the way to the corner of that intersection with Burger to then ride in to get to your retail, or go up to the other end of the retail and then I'm assuming come back around. It's a little unclear as to how you're planning for ADA access. I love the idea of that staircase, but it basically sounds like I don't want you to disadvantage ADA residents and force them to travel longer to reach your retail space if possible.
So,
I fully acknowledge that this is also an edge case, but it's worth considering.
yeah. So this front plaza area is a carryover from the previous design. So we can look at adding a switchback ramp here. I just know there is quite a slope from Annapolis Road up to the existing pad. And because the parking lot's existing, we can't really play with those pad elevations too much. But we can look at adding a additional, or I guess we don't really want to remove that ramp down there, because then we're kind of moving the access from one spot to another instead of kind of making it more accessible. But we'll definitely look at that and see if it's a possibility.
Yeah, can I suggest, I don't know that a ramp down there would be worth giving up the green space, given that we are on 175. If there was somebody, even pedestrians or someone on a wheelchair, I just don't know where they would be coming from. So I think I would suggest that our focus remain on people arriving by vehicular traffic and then having access into the retail, into the restaurant.
Absolutely, absolutely fair.
Yeah, and the one other thing I would also say is the one place where people possibly could come pedestrian traffic would be up Burger Street. There is some residential up that way.
That is true. Yes, there are residences back on Burger, and then but it looks like you have stairs. So I'm looking on the north side, and it looks like you have stairs to access your retail on the north side as well. Is that correct?
I believe the stairs are only right here.
Yeah, that would be more like a service type door there. We don't expect that. We expect that the store frontage would be facing inward.
Okay. All right. So yeah, that's fine then, because if that was going to be an actual entrance to the store, and the other side was not. Okay, I'm good there then. Okay. And then the last question I had was in terms of and this may be a moot point because the parking lot is already developed. Is there the ability in the future to add EV charging stations in your lot design, or because the lot is already there and you're not planning on modifying the lot, but that time has passed?
No, we absolutely plan to add EV chargers. That is the future, and we've identified locations. Michael, do you want to show back towards the steakhouse where those locations would be?
Yeah, because the steakhouse would probably be the one where cars would sit for an extended period of time to actually use the chargers. So there's a possibility to put them along this kind of edge. There's existing electrical transformers, so there's space to put a little bit more of the necessary infrastructure for the chargers there. There's also some space kind of along this rear. So we've identified some spots we need to, when we're in the site design, when we're talking to charging infrastructure people, to figure out, all right, where can they get their feed from and what also makes sense in their eyes.
No, that's great. I appreciate that. It's not precluded, like that it's still a possibility for the future, which is great. So thank you. Okay, so I want to open it up to any members of the public who would like to provide any questions or comments. You can either post in the Q&A, or if you're an attendee, if you flag that you have a question. Mark, I would I don't remember exactly what they have to do as an attendee. So if you could remind me.
Yep, if they could just raise their hand, I can allow them to speak.
I just want to ask Black Rifle Coffee. Thank you.
Okay, so Jerry, I saw that your hand was up. So if you could be brief, ask your question, and floor is yours. Thank you.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can.
Yeah, so interesting suggestion I have for you is that because of your proximity to MD32, you may want to consider pre-wiring for a level 3 charger ahead of time while you have the development there in place, because level 3, even though as fast as it is, will take from 20 to 40 minutes, and being next to several restaurants has that potential to attract customers who want to have a charge after a long trip on the highway. That's all I have.
Yeah, good idea. We'll consider that.
Thanks, Jerry. Okay, any other members of the public who would like to provide comment? Okay, seeing no other hands going up, back to the committee. Any other final comments or questions from the committee?
Yeah, I just want to say one thing. I think you did a great job on, and also the committee, when reviewing this, on adjusting for what the market says right now. And the market says there is no room for office or need for office, and smaller retail is where it is right now. So I appreciate that from everybody.
One more question. In the sidewalk area, will there be any like 1 or 2 like bike racks at all?
So right now we have the bike racks kind of centralized. This
Okay.
island existing as kind of like a mountable curb. It's not a landscaped island. But there is we can look at possibly adding something to the front. This is not going to remain a 10-foot sidewalk. There's probably going to be more of these planters and foundation landscaping. But then there's also, this stormwater is not set there. It can be shifted slightly, and everything could be kind of made to flow a little bit better.
I just didn't know if there was one at all. So the fact that there's one there sounds good to me. It didn't need to be in the sidewalk area.
Okay, gotcha.
Thanks, Abigail. One other comment I just thought of is as just a consideration, something to think about. You have a fair amount of green corner space there for with the staircase. Consider if you have room for some type of like art exhibit as well, like a sculpture or something, to highlight that corner. You have the opportunity in case something comes into play. Just as a
Nice idea, Jason. Great.
Yeah, that is a good idea. I agree.
okay. Any other final comments from the committee? Andrew?
The elevation that faces 175 Annapolis Road, you mentioned that that's really kind of the back end of the retail center and more of service entrances. It looks like
they're made to, we don't, with it being the forward facing element of our center, we want it to look like it. We want it to present well, and so it's designed to look front and back very similar. But clearly, as you enter and park, the back of the building, the so-called back away, faces the parking lot, would become the entrance. But you can see from the elevations that it's made to look like storefront and not, you know, back of the house type service part of the building.
Okay. And can you describe some of the landscaping that you have along 175?
I believe we were proposing street trees. And then there's landscaping up in the foundation plantings. But because of all of the, there's storm drain, there's a water line, so there's a couple utility easements in there. And that, you know, investing a lot into landscaping into something that could be torn up. So I think with this, just the street trees and the upper foundation plantings would kind of give a good look, with then grass area in between on that slope.
Okay, I agree. I think landscaping back here is going to be super important. And I know there's definitely a challenge here trying to balance this being back a house and also something that's street facing. So I think you're achieving the right balance here, and so I applaud that.
Okay, so thanks everybody for the good discussion and comments. And so the question before the committee is, they're here obviously for a request from the committee to submit a letter to the county with our assessment of their redesign in terms of, do we feel it meets the intent and scope of the master plan. So overall, the comments I've recorded from the committee are, I would say, positive in terms of the presentation and the as well as from the community members as well, positive. Jim, they're giving you actually a lot of credit as well for your statements on being so positive with considering environmental concerns and doing the best you can with trying to minimize environmental impact by looking at the heat island, and as well as with the electric vehicle stations and permeable surfaces. So positive feedback for you on that one from both committee and the community. So thank you for that. So I would say I would open to the committee then in terms of motion for what the letter should be in terms of direction.
I make a motion, Jason, that we approve the plan as presented with the comments you just suggested, including in the letter, as well as you forgot the solar panel, to encourage that also.
Okay, so the motion on the table is to recommend approval with the comments I listed about the environmental concerns. I'm also going to add queuing, EV chargers, the art sculpture, and the comments about revisiting the sidewalk plans to prevent people from walking across the grass and ruining green space, as well as a revisit for access for pedestrians to the restaurant. Those are all the comments I have recorded. And to include the solar, the request that consider solar to the maximum extent possible. So that is the current motion on the table. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, thanks, Abigail. All right, any other final comments or thoughts from the committee on a recommendation of approval with all of those comments? Okay. Hearing none, all in favor of the committee recommending approval with the comments as stated, raise your hand or say aye.
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 Okay. The ayes have it, so the committee will recommend approval. All right, thank you. Appreciate your time, Jim and Michael. Thank you for coming.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
all very much. Have a good night.
You too, thank you. Okay, next on the agenda, we have another developer presentation for the Academy subdivision of lots 1 through 26, block 9. And so I see Steve Andraka. Hopefully I pronounced your last name correctly.
Good enough.
Okay, so I will turn it over to you.
Right, well, this is we're doing a proposed residential development. Here, if I go ahead and share the screen here, might make it easier. Did I do something wrong?
Oh, it's over here.
Oh. Can you all see that okay?
Yep, we can see your screen.
All right, great. Existing on the site, it's the existing use was an old daycare center. That building will be demolished and then proposed for the site. The site is within the Odenton core district zone, and the proposed use would be 28 over under type condo units. The layout where all the units would be facing outward, so the front of the units would be facing the roadways. And then the parking would be internal to this parking court. So we'd be providing one car for each unit, plus an additional designated space for each unit, plus another 13 additional space for guest parking and whatnot. We'll be short essentially by 15 spaces based on the county code requirements. But along Baltimore Avenue, we're going and doing, it would be 28 foot of pavement. So that would allow for on-street parking on one side of the road, which would allow for an additional 11 spaces. Pine Street would not have any on-street parking because it's a narrower road type section. The roads, both of the roadways would each have a planting strip, and then so there's a planting strip, and then you see in the yellow the sidewalk area. So we'd be providing a landscaping. Well, let me jump to the landscape plan. Landscaping wise, we'd be providing street trees along the roadway along Pine here, and then we're going to be providing shade trees between this proposed development and the adjacent development, along with internal landscaping. And then in terms of the pavement and stuff, it's trying help address stormwater management and soften things a little bit. We have the main drive aisle coming in, and where your utilities are would be your regular type pavement, but then we're going to use pervious pavement like pavers or some other choice of pervious pavement for the internal area here where you don't have utilities, and all of the parking spaces would also be the pervious pavement. Additionally, for the stormwater management, you have gravel wetlands, microbiome retention areas. And so let me jump back to the site plan, sorry. Buffer wise, the northern part of the site has the stream buffer, the 100-foot stream buffer, which we're maintaining a 100-foot buffer, and then also within that buffer area is also the wetlands and the wetland buffer and the floodplain. They're all within that 100-foot stream buffer, so we wouldn't be disturbing any of the buffers. Green space, as illustrated on here, you can kind of see where the green areas are. And we've got 4 open space activity type areas. There's a public activity area up here, which would also have benches, the cluster mailboxes, and a bike rack area for bike parking. And then internally are sidewalks, and some of this area acts as your green area and activity area, which also include benches, 3 benches in the different activity areas. We're providing a total of 3/4 of an acre of green area, which does include the lands, the wetlands and the floodplain area in that 3/4 of an acre. Setback wise, the units have a 0 setback from the right of way line, such that they're right up against the front property line to give it that town center type look. The units on the end here actually front toward the wetlands buffer area and have the sidewalk coming around. Again, for bicycle and pedestrians, we're proposing 6-foot walkways along here and with a green space strip, and again, bicycle parking up in this area. The internal sidewalks, like in here and here, those would be 3 and 5 foot wide sidewalks. And again, the outside seating, again, we'll have benches, 3 locations in the activity areas. Lighting, it might be easier to jump back to the landscape plan. We've got parking lighting. Let me zoom in a little bit on this. So we got lighting within the parking areas to help illuminate those. And then lighting sign along, you have the existing signing along the road at the intersection for the designating between Pine Street and Baltimore Avenue, and existing street lights. Again, the lot configuration, like I indicated, these would be fronting on the roads, and these last units are again fronting toward the wetlands. Jump down to the architectural. Architectural rendering, there wouldn't be any steps up on the exterior, it'd be level with the sidewalks. And then it's a 4-story type unit. It's over under type condo townhome. And the same type of thing on both streets. The site's not within the historic preservation area. And then we're not going to be seeking the bonus program. Modifications, we are going to be going for a modification on the sidewalk section along Pine over here, because we're doing that to match what was done with the townhomes here. So we're doing a 6-foot walkway and then having a planting area, opposed to having a 10-foot walkway, because we're trying to match what was modified and done with the adjacent, so there's not a big change in the sidewalk and streetscape along Pine Avenue. And then off of it, we'd be providing shade trees in that landscape strip that we provide. The other modification that we'd be seeking is to the parking requirements, or a reduction in parking requirements. 84 spaces are required. We'd be providing 69 spaces, with then another 11 parking space would be available as parallel parking on Baltimore Avenue. That pretty much covers the checklist items. So I guess I open for questions.
Okay. Thank you. So just like last time, committee members will get a chance to ask their questions first, and then we'll go over to the community members. So I'll open it to the committee. Do you have any questions? Abigail?
Yeah, so I think it was the first page, that area for the green space. I'm just waiting till you go up.
Yeah.
On that bottom area.
Down
Um,
here.
yes, I can see it has an acronym for stormwater management, so I just want to clarify this green space. It's not just grass, or what exactly is it?
That is correct. It's not just grass. It'll be planted like this area here where I'm marking right now. That's going to be submerged gravel wetlands based on the
Okay,
soils that we found, but it would be planted within the submerged gravel wetlands. And in this area here, this area here, and this area here would be microbial retention areas. So again, that would be planted with landscape or microbial plantings in each of those facilities.
okay, great. Yeah, I wanted to make sure that there was some type of stormwater or green infrastructure component to it. It sounds like you did that. I think I know we talked about in the master plan of a few months ago about how there will be an adjustment to the minimum parking requirements. So I don't know if maybe Jason or Mark, maybe you might know a little bit more of there will be changes to the leniency on parking requirements. You're on mute, Jason.
Yeah, so it's a recommendation in the master plan. We haven't gone ahead and actually made any changes to the requirements of minimum or maximum parking.
Okay. Well, I think in general, what we've learned about American parking footprint habits, having less parking is usually never a bad thing. We usually have more than is ever used.
Thanks, Abigail. Any more comments from the committee?
I do. So these units are 2/2. There is no garage, correct?
There would be a garage. Each unit will have
We'll have
a single garage and a single designated parking spot
your driveway.
for that unit.
Okay, gotcha.
I think that's even more reason to not have it meet, or it be okay to have that lower parking if they're getting technically 2 spaces.
So each unit gets 2 spaces, one a garage and then an on-site parking spot?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I built these over behind the cemetery village at Town Center Commons, and they work well.
So there's 4 garages next to each other for the ones, how does that work?
Yeah,
single-
it's essentially each one of these buildings has 2 units, one above and one below, but the garage level, like the top unit might have the right side and the bottom unit would have the left side. So you have 2 garage doors at each one of the buildings, and one would be for the top floor, one would be for the lower floor.
Oh, okay.
Here is the back architectural. Do you want to show me?
Yeah, oh, yeah, let me jump to the back down the architectural, the rear architectural. Sorry. So one unit, this might be the garage for the top level, and this would be the garage for the lower level.
Oh, so each unit is 2 levels. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Do committee members have more comments or questions?
I have one question. Do I see that connection to the other development?
Yeah, and right now we're proposing an interconnection, but it would have to be with permission from the HOA with this other development. That's what we're suggesting, but there hasn't been any anything finalized out with this other development or anything like that, but it was suggested that we have an interconnection.
Okay.
Question, this is Martin. Was this originally proposed differently than what we're seeing now?
Yes, it was originally proposed as regular townhome units like what you see on the adjacent subdivision. But from the feedback from the county, that wasn't the direction that this town center area zone was supposed to be going. So they suggested we do, through a couple iterations with them, that we do something more like this.
You went from 12 units to 28.
That is correct.
Okay, so I just want to clarify to make sure I understood what you just said. So the reason that you're back here to go from your townhouse proposal to a condo proposal is because the county suggested that this should be condos and not townhouses. So the county is the reason for why this is now a condo development?
Well, they initially suggested when we went in through planning and zoning that a regular townhome community is not what was trying to be achieved in the Odenton town center area. So through a couple iterations with planning and zoning, this is the layout that has been changed to.
Marcus or Jason, is there some kind of directive that forced that, or I don't understand how that would have happened?
Yeah, the county planning and zoning was kind of wanted to see a larger density of units. It was essentially, it's not supposed to be, I guess it's lower density, it's supposed to be a higher density type of a use.
I'm looking for the letter that was submitted to the applicant on behalf of our development division team.
Yeah, that would be great, Mark. I'd actually really like to see that, because I'm actually going to pull a Stuart here and say that I've driven through this area. Like, I know this area, and I am displeased if that is what the county is saying, because this area is single family homes. The highest density in that area are the townhouses, and to go even higher density with condos is not the area. Like this part of Odenton is not condos. And so I am disturbed to hear that.
Jason, can I interject for a second? Okay, so let's be clear on the word condo is being used here. Okay, so the only reason why it's a condominium is because there is common area that has to be taken care of that is in common. It is not an individual ownership. The houses themselves are considered townhouses. Okay, there's two over. I'm not justifying everything, but I just want to make sure we're clear on this. It's not that now there's townhouses and they wanted condominiums. The townhouses that are behind this project are condominiumized too, because they're broken up into different buildings. They all have the same common area to deal with. Reason why it's done that is divide and conquer. Okay, you want different condominium regimes. So you have 2 or 3. You have it in the village of town center. Each building is a different condominium, even though those are apartments. So these are townhouses, and they're condominiumized just as a word, not a condominium building. And again, I'm not justifying it one way or the other. I drove back there today too. I know the area extremely well. My partner had an easement in that activity area that he had to sign off on. So I'm very, very familiar with this property. I personally don't have a problem with the density. They're 2 over 2 townhouses. That's what they are. And you've got townhouses in front of them. And then right across the street, you have apartments that are 4 stories. So it sort of fits in with the way we want to go with town center, is creating more residential density. That's what we've been talking about, walkability, and this does all of that. So yes, there are single families. There'll be a mix of single families, and now there'll be a mix of townhouses, and now there'll be a mix of 2 over 2s. We also talked about different products and not having the same product through town center. So in my personal opinion, that achieves all of this. Okay, now the fact that they're calling it the word condominium may be getting in, but they're not condominiums. You know, the buildings along Pine Street is going to be one condominium regime, and the one in the middle is going to be a second condominium regime, and the one in the third is going to be another. And they're going to have shared costs that they're going to split with everybody, and then share costs for their building. They have a common roof for their buildings, they'll share in that, and money will be put away. So that's the idea of the condominium of it. So I'm just giving my opinion there. I think it gives us now a mix of different products in that area, from single families all the way to condos across the street, apartments rather.
I agree with Stuart. The whole idea of like fear of mixing houses is, to be fully transparent, like rooted in white supremacy and in NIMBYism, and there is no fear issue of like, what does character even mean to have different densities mixed together? We want more walkable places, and that means like not having the sprawl of only single family houses in one places, only mixed multifamily houses in another off-rooted place. There should be more commingling, and the reality is that like 70% of housing development is single family, and that's not the reality of what US demographics have been for decades, but yet we continue to build that. We need more multifamily housing, and these type of duplexes houses isn't the fullest solution, but it's part of the solutions, and mixing it is part of the solution. So I don't see a problem with having single family housing near other types of density housing.
So the issue I have with increasing the density is, and this is where I'd like the issue I have with what you've done. I'm looking at your previous proposal with the townhouses. There was a lot of green space. There was a lot of activity space spread around that was meaningful. That's gone in this proposal here. And so that, I think the reason you're kind of getting more of an angry Jason on this one is because basically activity spaces you've described are benches. And that entire area to the right, I hear you, but that's wetlands, as well as I believe there's an elevation difference there, which is not, there's a difference between usable activity space and green space. You've taken away all the usable activity space, as well as the joined activity space that was originally planned with the original townhome community that is existing, because the OTCAC did say we wanted you to work with that other HOA if possible to join activity spaces together. That's gone. So I think that's my biggest challenge I see with what you've done is you've subtracted out any place for people to do any type of outdoor activity, because the green space just isn't meaningful anymore as an activity space. It's just green space. And I have to lay that out there in that way. And because that's what I see.
Mm-hmm.
As well as Stuart, I lived in the town center commons 2x2s, and so they're great units. Like that, I have no issues with this type of design because it's actually very, very smart. They're very spacious, and so I think it's actually going to work very well for the Odenton area. I am a little concerned about the parking because I don't share Abigail's optimism about less parking, because my experience has been with town center commons, you get 2 parking spaces for all the people who have 3 and 4 cars, and so there's a lot of bleed over. It's not less than 56 cars that are going to go into this place. You're going to probably have anywhere from like 64 to 80. It's just a fact of life, unfortunately. But you have a number of spaces there. So I think my biggest thing is the green space / activity space. Other than just, I would like to understand though from the county's perspective on like exactly why they suggested all of this versus that integrated, having multiple shared activity space townhome communities to try and bring people together, which is the original intent of the OTCAC's letter the last time you were here.
Yeah, Jason, I did find the letter, and again, there's a lot in the letter, so I'm just going to pull out some of the key points here. Our development division stated the proposed layout is typical of a suburban cluster development and does not meet the design guidelines from the master plan. The proposed dwellings are set at a maximum setback of 20 feet with driveways in the front yard. The driveways are detrimental to the intended pedestrian environment and the number proposed eliminate the possibility of on-street parking. The layout must be revised to orient the dwellings at or near the minimum setback with the streetscape and activity spaces designed in accordance with the master plan requirements. Steve, was there anything else in the letter that indicated that the county?
I think it was more the interaction that Candace had with Jeff
Courtney.
Twenty and
Dan Bever engine.
Dan Bever engine. with the
Dan and
county.
Courtney, okay.
I mean, believe me, they went back and forth with layouts
Sure.
quite a number of times, and initially it was like, well, you're not meeting the density that we'd like to see in this area.
Can I ask, there's an activity space number 2 on the right-hand side before you go down the ravine. Is that usable space?
Between the
Yeah,
two,
that's it, but I think it's 21.
Or is that where it drops off? There's no elevation on this. Well, yeah, there is, but I can't see it.
It's before the LOD. It's like, it's not in the LOD, it's all like
Yeah.
around there.
See where the bench, it's calling out the proposed bench, the sidewalk area, and this green area here, so it's not into this area, it's.
Gotcha, okay.
so Mark, any more insight you can give us on this?
Not in regards to this specific layout and the density, and right, there are conversations that occur between an applicant and the Office of Planning and Zoning that may not necessarily make it into the letter if those changes have been made. So
Okay.
I can follow up with our other colleagues and get their perspective.
But Jason, do we need more information on this background, or do we just use what we have now to make a decision or recommendation?
So the question in front of the committee that we have to answer today is the, I believe it's, this is where I'm gonna need some help from Mark on this one. So there's the redesign to go from the townhouses to the activity space. It's the comment on that. But the previous approval from the committee, there was a modification request for Pine Street sidewalk to match the adjacent property. What Steve said is they're requesting a modification for that same modification. And so I don't know if the previous approval from the committee for that modification to Pine Street still stands, or if we have to reissue that modification request approval. I don't know.
I'd recommend the committee take a position on the modification as it stands with this new design.
Okay, fair. And then the second modification is the provision of 69 parking spaces plus 11 for on-street parking to pull it up to 80 instead of the required 84. So that's the second modification I've recorded. Are there any other modifications, Steve?
No.
Okay. Yes, it's just those two, and then basically the thought on the redesign fitting the master plan guidelines. In terms of what Mark read about the driveways not being like how they're facing the road and not being pedestrian conducive, from the letter of the master plan, they are correct. From how that community is currently laid out, I think that's a bit of a stretch, but that's Jason's personal opinion. But from the spirit of the master plan, they're correct. So I think there is actually enough for the committee to provide an answer if the committee does feel like it. So I would say, are there other comments or questions from the committee?
Jason, just real quickly, if I could ask Steve a question. Steve, this is Martin. Did you talk about the vegetation much? You did in the retention areas and some areas, but other plantings around, what do you expect to put in there? I don't native plants and so on, but what can you provide a bit more
Yeah.
information on that? What you're providing there? Oh, there it is. Okay.
Yeah, so we're along Pine Street in that landscape strip.
Yeah.
We have shade trees and also shade trees in the area, the green area between the gravel wetlands and the adjacent subdivision. Then internally, we'd have trees and shrubs.
Okay.
And then in each of these, the stormwater management, those would each be landscaped or have their stormwater management plantings. You know, the microbial retention and the gravel wetlands both utilize plantings as part of their treatment.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. I appreciate that. On the trees, the shade trees, that's great. A lot of shade because you get more hardscape there. Are the trees good for wildlife? Do you know? Are they lindens? Are they maples, oaks? Do you know what they are?
Yeah, we're at
We-
sketch.
We haven't gotten to that degree of selecting species of trees yet for that.
Okay.
But in terms of for wildlife, there's the whole large green area of, you know, it's a contiguous green area that will be preserved that's adjacent to the stream all the way up to the back of the units. But,
Mhm.
you know, realistically, yeah, you might have squirrels going to trees and stuff like that, but I wouldn't expect that you're gonna have a whole lot of wildlife and plantings adjacent to the parking lot.
Yeah, I guess I'm not thinking squirrels. I'm thinking more birds. So
Oh, okay, gotcha.
bird value for the trees you plant. Sometimes the trees that are planted have no value to the bird life. So if it does encourage, you know, birds to come there, that might add more interest to the community.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can certainly pick shade tree species that are would be attractive to birds. I mean,
There you go. Yeah.
now I'm not gonna put any dead trees for the woodpeckers, but
Not yet anyway, right?
yeah.
Not right away. That's it for me, Jason.
All right, any other comments from the committee or questions? Okay, now we'll open it to the public. So if there are any members of the public who would like to ask questions or provide comments and feedback, now's your opportunity. So just raise your hand and then Mark will activate you. So Noreen Crispin, you have your hand up, so you can now unmute yourself.
Yeah, so my concern is always about the environment like everybody else's, and I really appreciate and respect everybody's view on that, as well as Abigail's comment. But if you follow like the University of Maryland Extension Master Gardener program grouping, that if you go there to some of those websites, you can see what's better to plant. Along 175 at Fort Meade, they put crepe myrtles, which has no value, except that, they're pretty. And then sweet gums, which the balls fall down and everybody falls on those. So, like oaks and maples, like Martin was saying, are really good for the environment, but also for our good health. So I would really encourage that, and, have as much already planted in the bioretention ponds, because once you get that, it's really hard for anybody to get in there and do any kind of improvement. So that would be great if that could happen. Thank you.
Thanks, Noreen. Other comments and feedback? Okay, Jerry?
Yes, I'm wondering, under the development, do the owners of the properties that you're building have the ability to decide if they want to put solar on the roofs or not, or that's going to be an HOA decision?
the solar on the roof of these units, just, residential units that are condo or shared between units, it might be difficult doing solar and tying it to all different electrical services. So when I talked to the developer about that, he probably would not be doing solar on this type of a product.
I will say, however, that in Maryland, it's illegal for an HOA to deny that you can have solar
That's correct,
for
right?
your specific unit. And there's also a program with BGE called Community Solar, where you don't have solar, like own the solar yourself, but you pay to have your power come from a solar farm.
Yeah. And a possibility could be to do solar for the lighting in the community or something like that. But when I had asked him tentatively if he was looking at doing solar, he said for this type of product, he hadn't seen a solar just because you're trying to split it up between, it's one roof shared by 2 units type of thing.
So I think the idea is that a owner could decide still on their own if they want to pursue that, a condo owner, because it's an HOA can't deny a condo owner from having it.
I got you.
Then the only other thing I've left is that does the developer offer the opportunity for the owner of the particular garage to install preemptively a charging station?
Well, since each unit will have a designated parking space and a garage, they'd be able to do a charging in their garage. And if they have a EV vehicle, they could have essentially a charging station right in their garage.
Okay, so I'm just making sure that's through a third party, not through a developer, or does the developer offer that?
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
Is that an option that they have to take to a third party, or does the developer offer that choice for them from during construction?
I don't think they've looked into it that far. When I had discussion with the builder, the response was that, well, they'll each have their own garage unit, so they could have an EV charger in there if that's something that they choose to have.
Yeah, I think an owner has to do that on their own, like the developer doesn't install that.
I'd like to make a motion to vote on this.
Hold on, sir. We have to make sure we end public comment. So, Jerry, hope that answered your question. So thank you for your comments. Any other public comments? Okay. All right, so back to the committee, and I do want to correct one thing for the record. In terms of solar for HOAs cannot deny that is true. However, in this context with these shared buildings, an individual unit owner will not own the roof. So just for everybody attending, that an individual unit owner here won't actually have the authority to have solar installed. That is a community decision of whether it's allowed or not, because the roof is not, as Stuart stated, it's the exterior of the building is a shared resource. And so for this complex, individual unit owners won't have that authority. Assuming that this is similar to all of the other 2x2s that exist in Odenton. Okay, so back to the committee. Any other final comments on this proposal? Okay, so the question in front of the committee is to determine if we will recommend approval of the change, the redesign to 2x2 condominiums away from townhouses. The list of comments that I recorded are that activity space has been reduced from what was previously proposed. The landscaping needs to be selected to encourage birds and other wildlife to take advantage of the green area that is available on this space that is not developable. Again, that was confirmed. Landscaping is critical to pick the right native plantings to fit both visual appearance and not be a nuisance. The solar items I'm not actually counting as a comment because that's going to be up to the HOA in terms of what they would do there. That's not really something we would recommend for the developer or suggest. So that's what I have recorded in terms of our discussion. So is there a motion on what the committee should do?
I motion to approve with the suggestion of these items.
Can we
before-
clarify what's happening with the parking?
Oh, great point. So that the committee would also recommend approval of modifications to the Pine Street sidewalk to match the adjacent property, and that the committee would recommend approval for the permitting the reduction in allowed required parking to be 69 plus 11. So,
discussion, Jason, on the letter from planning and zoning. Do you or does the committee need any more information on that background discussion, or we just are to vote based on what we're seeing here?
I mean, we're an advisory committee. I mean, we can advise what we want. It seems like they got some direction from the
Yeah.
county to come before us with this
It could
plan.
be stored, could be, yeah.
Okay, so I could put in the letter that the committee is recommending approval based upon the information received that the county recommended that the developer redesign from the townhouses because they were not sufficiently there was not sufficient high density to meet master plan requirements.
Yeah,
And that our recommendation of approval is predicated upon that. If that
Yeah.
would suffice.
yeah, as long as the county's okay, sure.
That's a good way of doing it, Jason.
Okay. All right, so just for clarity, to make sure before we ask for a second, the motion is to recommend approval of the redesign conditioned on that, with the caveat that the committee is recommending approval of the redesign based upon information that the county provided, that the original developer proposal for the townhouses was not sufficient to meet density requirements of the master plan. And the committee also recommends approval of the Pine Street modification and the required parking. And then accounting for the activity space and landscaping discussion that we had. So that's what's currently on the table.
Pretty efficient. Yep.
Okay, is there a second for that?
I'll second that.
Okay, Martin, thank you. Any other discussion on the contents of the letter? Okay, so all in favor of that motion for approval with those comments, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Okay. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. So this redesign is recommended to be approved. The modifications recommended to be approved with the provided comments. So Steve, thank you for your time. Thanks for presenting to us.
Great, thank
We
you.
appreciate you coming here.
Great. Yeah, I know when she is screwed.
Okay, so you can stop broadcasting. Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so next on our agenda is an Odenton Town Center Master Plan and Code revisions update from Mark.
Yep, so I can be short with this. The master plan was presented to the PAB at the end of April. We received a few letters of testimony, and then on May 10th, the Planning Advisory Board recommended to approve the plan, which means moving it now to County Council's review. So they recommended approval 4-0. Of the changes, it was really just adding a definition for affordable housing. Okay. So again, that is just the master plan. The code revisions is not really within their purview, but the Office of Planning and Zoning typically just gives them a briefing on those code revisions. And we plan to do that tentatively on June 28th. Okay, there is no public hearing, there's no written testimony for that. It is just a presentation, well, just really a briefing in a public meeting to the Planning Advisory Board, and they don't provide a recommendation on that. Okay. And then that all sets us up to present everything, which is the master plan, as well as the code revisions to Articles 17 and 18 on September 5th. Okay, and those essentially would be two bills. They need to be adopted at the same time because, like we said, we're removing the requirements from the master plan, migrating those over to the county code. So if you approve the master plan even a few weeks before the code and they don't have the same effective date, then you could have a situation where there are no requirements for development within the Odenton Town Center. Okay. So that's the recap of Planning Advisory Board, County Council, and where we stand with the Odenton Town Center Master Plan and the code revisions. I do just want to highlight a couple other items. June 20th, there is a community meeting for the community park at the library. They're not going into the full design. They're not going into a full-blown meeting about the project. It is just strictly on those modifications that they're requesting for wetland buffers, and I believe there might be a specimen tree.
When is that, Mark? Sorry.
June 20th.
June 20th. Okay.
Yep. So if you do go
somewhere to register for it already, or like a time, virtual, in person?
Let me look that up now. So you can go to the county's website and it should be on the county calendar, the full county calendar, and just go to June 20th and there should be more information on that. I'm just going to verify here. So there's not. So if you go to, I'll follow up with everybody with an email with some more information on how to participate in that. I don't want to take up time here. But again, for everybody else on the call from the public, you can navigate to the county's website and look for, it would be, if you go to aacounty.org/OTC, we have a link to it on our OTC website to go to the Department of Recreation and Parks or Department of Public Works project website for the park. And there it'll have some more information. Okay. And again, our next meeting then for the Odenton Town Center Advisory Committee is on June 27th.
Okay. Thanks, Mark. And so
Colette had a question.
Colette, you're muted.
Yeah, thank you. Can I just ask about the definition for affordable housing, what that was and what that was based on?
Right. So we pulled it from Plan 2040 just to be consistent among with how we're using it within the Office of Planning and Zoning. And it's essentially that you're not burdened with housing costs over 30% of your income. So again, affordable housing, right, is different from workforce housing in the sense that if you're making $1 million, a $300,000 payment per year is reasonable, is affordable, but clearly it's not affordable to somebody making less than that. So whereas that's scaled, whereas workforce housing is more of a static figure that's used.
Okay, no, that makes sense. Thanks, Mark. Do you by any chance know how that compares to neighboring jurisdictions? Is it also 30% of AMI, or is it?
That's the general term. So for workforce housing, we use the Baltimore Metropolitan Statistical Area, and that encompasses many counties within this area. I think it includes everything from Carroll down to Howard, and here in Anne Arundel County. I'm not sure how far north and east it goes as well. But again, for affordable housing, that's the general guideline or definition.
Thanks.
Thanks, Mark. So just for the committee's awareness, I will be drafting something for the county council for their presentation in September. So we'll talk through that when the time comes. But that's the current timeline. Okay, so moving to advocacy and new business. So first item, invitation for guest speakers. Abigail, this was your idea. And so what I want to do is give you an opportunity to just present it briefly to the committee, just so we can make sure feedback, make sure we factor that in before we take any action here.
Yeah, so I went to the National Planning Conference last month, and I met the community development officer for the city of, I just missed it. Oh, the city of Woodstock in Georgia. She did a presentation about the municipality. It's a small town, an hour from the major Atlanta downtown area. And she talked about the history of what that town Woodstock had been, of traditionally considered a throughway town that everyone just saw as that and all it would ever be, and how the work the city did promoted it to be more transition from what that had been for decades to now being one of the most vibrant destinations in a neighboring and than what it previously used to be. So I saw a lot of connections with Odenton. Woodstock is also a historic area, and I thought she could provide just some insight or Q&A questions, give a little high-level overview of how that transition happened for the city of Woodstock, because it seems like, at least from our conversations, that's our goal with Odenton, to be more than just some throughway town to get to Baltimore or DC. We want it to be a destination that people like and enjoy. So yeah, I'd spoken with her after her presentation and told her a little bit about Odenton and the interests and the barrier, or asking her questions about barriers or challenges she had in the work to transition Woodstock. And she was really receptive to the idea of coming to speak to our group if we were interested. And she is a public servant as well. She's the community development officer for Woodstock. So it's not a thing of she's expecting to be paid in any way. It's just out of the kindness of her heart. So yeah, I just thought if I'd open it up, I just put a link in the chat that gives a little bit more context to her. Her name is Tracy Albers. But yeah, that's all I had to say.
Okay, thanks, Abigail. So the question that I talked to Mark about this, and his suggestion was that we bring it up here at no TCAC meeting, make sure that members would be okay if we extend invitations to other members. And this could be the start. So like we could invite other community, say there's no TCAC that's similar in other areas, look for commonality across other areas and just get feedback and advice from others. And so we wanted to see if the committee would be okay with that in terms of potential agenda items that would just for speakers like that. So does anyone have any vehement thoughts in favor or opposed to that idea?
This is Martin. I would strongly support that. I think we need some other ideas to bounce off, and see how it works for us. We don't have all the expertise. We don't have all the viewpoints. And I think this would be a great opportunity for us to gain some additional knowledge.
I would just recommend too that if you do have somebody in mind that it's discussed here in this open forum before an invitation goes out for each person.
Okay.
Each invited speaker.
Okay. Any other comments?
I think it's a great idea.
Okay. Andrew, I saw you unmuted briefly as well.
I was just going to say it sounds awesome.
Okay.
I like it.
All right. So what I'm hearing then is, Mark, you and I can talk about if it should be I send an invite or if it should be P&Z. We can talk through that. We'll figure that out. But it sounds like that the committee is at least on board with hearing from this individual that Abigail's recommending. Okay, great. So one thing before we advance to 6B, Mark flagged for me back on item number 3, the Mead Center. There's one modification they forgot to bring up that we actually do have to vote on. They were requesting a modification to combine the review processes. This is a code. They're requesting a waiver in the code. This is not a master plan. So the stance the committee previously has taken is that because it does not involve the master plan, we take no stance on that modification request. So I just need a motion to do the same for the Mead Center, so I can include that in the letter.
Motion.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, Colette, thank you. Anyone opposed to us taking no stance on the modification request to combine review processes per the code? Okay. Hearing no objections, so we will also, I will put that in the letter as well, that the committee is, again, declines to take a stance because it is outside our purview. Okay, so item 6B, there were a series of resumes that came in. And so just to set some stage here, I did meet with the chief of staff for the county executive, and our conversation focused on the basically filling slots in membership of the OTCAC, because the county is looking at revising that entire process and making it much more objective and structured for all committees across the county. And so the new process is going into place. If you take a look at the application for committee boards, it's a lot more expansive than what it used to be. The OTCAC, for our new master plan, it actually pulls the OTCAC out of any resume reviews, because the county is trying to pull the committees out of selecting our own members. That which from a fair and balanced perspective, that actually kind of does make sense, that we shouldn't be picking the people that join. But until the new master plan comes into effect, we have the old master plan 2016 that says we have to review these resumes. So the committee has two choices. We can go through and discuss the resumes and provide a letter to the county executive stating what our opinion is on the resumes, or we could decline to take a stance on the resumes and recommend that the county apply the current process to these resumes and select the most appropriate members for the committee. Or we could do a hybrid of the two. It's up to the committee as to how we would like to approach the candidate resume piece. But I wanted to lay the context of where we are, and once the new master plan is voted and approved and put into effect, where we are going to be. So just so you understand, there is a difference there. So does anyone have any strong opinions on which path we should take?
Real quickly, Jason, how would they make a decision? Is it based on a balance of interest in the new model? Is it based on what they think the committee needs? Is it based on other factors? Any insight into that?
Yep. So actually it's more expansive than what we can do. What they do is they look at the charter documents to determine what is the membership supposed to be. And the current 2016 master plan says we're supposed to have a balanced membership of community members, developers, business interests, and other interested stakeholders. They use that as their criteria, look at the resumes, and they actually conduct interviews with the candidates. And then based upon the interview and the resume and the feedback questionnaire that we don't see any of the interview notes or the feedback questionnaire, they make a selection based upon what the committee balance should be. So the new process is objectively much better than what it was previously. I hands down, I will say that, because there's far more information that the candidates can actually provide directly to the county now, and that has been absent from previous selections.
Would we be able to make any recommendations if in fact the committee could come to some conclusion about the kinds of members we'd like to see or that seem to be missing from the group? One of the persons from the public who called in tonight, her name was Noreen. She had a lot of experience in wildlife or plants, things like that, which I thought was quite refreshing to hear that. So there may be other areas where we may say, hey, look, we don't have anybody doing this kind of work. What's kind of background? Could we make that kind of recommendation? And then we wouldn't make the choice, but we'd tell them what we think we need.
So the committee has done that in the past. We have declined to take a stance on individual resumes and instead listed a series of qualifications that we would like, or not qualifications, a series of backgrounds. So yeah. The committee has noted in the past that we have a noticeable lack of in terms of balance, not lack. We have a lack of balance across the business and developer interests. We have Stuart, which is he's the only person that's really representing the developer interests, and it would be nice to have more stewards that can represent a broader set of the business community and developer interests to make sure that we have all perspectives considered. And so, and we have like Abigail, her background in planning. It's nice to have these backgrounds. We have Colette who works in other county government. All of these backgrounds matter. And so the committee in the past has highlighted certain aspects where we feel something is missing. It's just a matter of what we feel is missing from the current distribution.
Yeah, I think somebody, from my viewpoint, I mean, we're getting too involved in this now, but Abigail's background and experience is really helpful. I'd like to see more of that. I'd like to see more of people who really look at these town center designs differently, sort of out of the box thinking, you know, to get us off of, you know, doing the same thing over and over again. Maybe there's some other fresh insights, some new ideas that a new member might be able to bring to the committee. So that's just one idea, but there may be certainly others here, Jason, that people would have ideas about. But anyway,
It was really uncomfortable doing it the last time. Let the county do it. They have an idea of what they need. I don't think we need an ornithologist on this committee. We need people in this committee that are willing to look over the material ahead of time, willing to go visit the sites, look at it on a map quest, because it's not happening with everybody on this committee. I'm just pointing that out. And so we need people that are going to be engaged. You're making decisions for developers. They're costing them hundreds of thousands and tens of thousands of dollars. You need to know what you're talking about. So I'd rather let the county do it. Like I said, I was really uncomfortable, especially in a public setting, going over and commenting on other people's resumes. It was very uncomfortable.
I agree with Stuart on that. We should let the county do it.
Okay.
but the question I think on the table is whether or not we provide any guidance to that. We may not be looking at individual resumes per se, but do we feel there's a need? Jason, you mentioned a need. I mentioned a need. Is there something we can say along those lines that may be able to help, you know, them determine how we get people in? Because they may not even know who we all are, what our backgrounds are. I don't know if they do.
So kind of like putting together a list of those broad categories, like you mentioned, Martin, and maybe just saying that with the recommendation of we'd prefer the county to do it. Here's what we've noticed might be some gaps that could be helpful to fill in or to keep in mind.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, just a quick question for you, Mark, but would they be coming to you and asking you for feedback in terms of what's needed on the OTCAC? How does that work?
So I was just going back to the December 6th, 2022 letter that was sent. I'm trying to copy and paste it over to the chat, but I'm really passing the information from you all over to our boards and commissions. And so if you don't want to take a position, then I would just mention that to our boards and commissions rep. And they would continue to follow through and make an appointment.
So there's two choices. We can either send a letter that says we appreciate that given the opportunity to review resumes, but the committee respectfully declines and trust the county to follow the new process to select membership members that will fill the committee. You can also say that we want the county to do this, and that the OTCAC recognizes that that having individuals from the community, from developer interests and business interests, is in the best interest of Odenton to have a variety of opinions. We want people, and I would phrase this better, but we want people who have understanding of planning, understanding of county processes, are out of the box thinkers, who are willing to take the time to review the developer materials that are presented to the committee, to visit the sites, and are engaged in the committee to provide feedback. So and those are the qualifications that the committee really would like to ensure that the county understands, that we would like people that exhibit those. And then any of the actual technical qualifications, we would trust the county to do its evaluation and what's best for the county.
In my opinion, Jason, I think that's what we ought to do, because I don't think the county understands who we are truly. I don't know that they understand who individuals are in this committee and what they bring. So they may not even know what the holes are. So it helps them understand us, and then they can make decisions better, I think, that way.
Okay, so could I get a motion to approve a letter that we will decline to take a stance on individual resumes, but instead provide a list of nice to haves that we feel would benefit the community and Odenton if they found individuals with these nice to haves. Could I get a motion for that letter?
I'll so move.
Okay, Martin, second from Abigail. Anyone have any other final comments on the content?
I have a comment. Right before you fill, how many vacancies currently exist? 2?
So, actually, we have, I believe we have 1 right now. I believe, correct, Mark, it's Andrea's position. And coming up, we're going to have 3.
Okay. I guess something that I'm concerned about, let's say Abigail drops out of the picture. She brought planning expertise right before they advertise the resumes. Can we let them know where our shortfalls are at that particular time? I.e., we just lost a planner, i.e., we just lost a steward and the developer talent that he brings to our committee.
That is a great question. And I think what that says I need to do is I should reach out to the chief of staff and see what the feedback process is with the committee selection process, such that when there is a vacancy upcoming, or when all of a sudden there's a sudden vacancy, is there a place for the committee to provide feedback into the county's process that says, here's what we just lost with this vacancy? So
Okay.
I don't see that as part of this letter, but I see that as a sustained effort. We need to make sure the county has that built into their process.
Yeah, good idea.
So I can take that for action. So great comment, Sandra. Thank you. Okay, any other final comments on the letter then for not taking a stance, but providing qualification feedback? Okay, any objections? Okay, hearing none, then I will send that letter as well. Okay, C, so the site visit with new county leadership. And so what I've heard is that there was an invitation sent out to the county executive to come visit Odenton and actually see the projects that are ongoing. In some ways, this gets to what Stuart was saying about visiting the sites, getting the county here to actually see Odenton. And so one of the items that we wanted to propose is that, okay, if the county executive does come to Odenton, it's a request from the OTCAC that we be included in the visit, so that way we can, like any one of us who is able to attend, can attend to provide insight from the OTCAC perspective to the county executive. So it's basically a request to be included in that visit, and encourage the county executive to come visit Odenton, see the development projects, see what's being done. You have the list from Mark that shows all the different sites that I'm assuming would be likely candidates. So that's what this next item is to get committee feedback on if you believe that letter is also appropriate and worth sending. Comments?
Do you know what the purpose is of him coming out to see the sites? Is it part of a larger touring the county type thing, or is he here specifically for a type of project, or it's just to check out Odenton?
Jason, you
Mark, other insights?
Councilwoman Hummer has raised her hand.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, Julie, if you know the answer to that.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yep, we can hear you. Hi, Julie.
I was just going to suggest that while it would be great to have the county executive to get to know Laurel more, I think it would be probably even more helpful to have the new director of planning and zoning to come out to see and to understand the plan from the ground standpoint and where we're talking about. She has come, she's very good, but she's come from another county. And so she is very even less familiar than others who don't live around here. And so I would just encourage you, if you're going to invite the county executive, that you also invite Ms. Jaworski as well, so that she could see in person some of these projects and the big plan that you're proposing out there. So that's all.
Great feedback. Thank you.
So I'm sorry, I'm confused now. Are we inviting the county executive, or is this, who's organizing this tour?
So this came out from a Central Maryland Chamber Odenton Action Coalition. I might hand it off to Stuart if that meeting or that site visit has been set up.
It hasn't. We're working through the chamber to set that up with the county executive and the planning and zoning director. So as soon as that happens, then we'll be able to figure out exactly the logistics and who can attend. So
This is a chamber sponsored event?
it's not an event. We had a chamber meeting on the Odenton Town Center master plan, and we invited the county executive. It was a developer meeting and the trades. It's a committee through the chamber that we have had for 15 years, maybe 20 years. We're responsible for getting the sidewalks along 175.
Yeah, but Colette asked a good question. I mean, who's organizing this? And that's
the chamber
for
is
developers.
Pardon?
If the purpose is for developers, that's a different meeting.
No, the meeting before was for developers. Out of the developer meeting came the idea to invite the planning and zoning director and the county executive out to get a better idea of what is happening or not happening in Odenton.
Yeah, but who's organizing the meeting?
The chamber is organizing
That's
it.
what I'm saying.
Okay. What's your point? The chamber is
Well,
organizing it.
yeah, we need to understand what the meeting is and who's organizing the meeting. And
Yeah,
it's
the
the chamber's
business
benefit.
community, the business community in Odenton.
Yeah, that's pretty okay, right.
Is economic development going to be coming out as well as part of that in terms of the leaders that are being invited?
We can, I believe it.
I'm just curious if if it's coming from the chamber, I would expect like Amy Gowan to be invited as well, or some of her folks.
We have had that discussion and she has introduced herself to our committee at the chamber.
Okay.
Okay. And Julie, I believe, was at that meeting as well.
Correct. Yes, I was at that meeting too. So yes, I think the more people we can show the reality of Odenton, hopefully the better able we're to get things done.
So does that answer everybody's question? Are there any more questions on it?
I think that's really helpful information.
Okay.
And
Great.
I think it's a great idea.
We will continue to follow up, and as soon as I have more feedback on it, we'll get it out to everybody.
Okay, so it doesn't sound like then a letter to, well, actually, a letter from the OTCAC in support of the Chamber of Commerce's effort to get them, the P&Z head and CE to visit, be helpful in promoting, like trying to get that to happen.
I would just say we want to be a part of it. It's going to happen.
Yeah. So you're welcome to. I don't think it's going to make a difference. We're making it happen. Okay. It's a matter of getting everybody's schedules coordinated. This just came up, I don't know, 2-3 weeks ago. And me being part of that committee and being on this committee will bring it to this committee so you can feel that you're represented in that way. It is also through the chamber, and they most of the time attend these meetings as well, represented here. So
Okay, so I'm not hearing then where a letter would actually be necessary for this.
that is correct. I think we can handle this without that.
Okay. All right. Okay, so advancing to 6D then, so that was a new item. So I wanted to thank Julie, your hand is up for 6D. Do you have a final comment?
No, it shouldn't be up. I just
Okay.
didn't put it down.
Okay, yep, just checking. So I want to thank Andrew and Don. So I kind of alluded earlier and said that we're going to be having 3 vacancies. And so Andrew and Dawn, thank you for all of the service you've done to the OTCAC. I think I got this right. I think this is your last meeting because your terms expire. So
Oh, man, I'm gonna miss you guys. Jeez.
So I actually wanted to give you an opportunity to have any last words as an OTCAC member. So Andrew.
Oh, sure. Well, it's been a pleasure serving on this committee for the last 5.5 or so years and getting to know some of the developers in the area and some of the others on the board too. We've seen a lot of projects come through over the years, and some of them are better than others. And we've had some good and healthy discussions, both with community members and within our community or our committee. And we've had a lot of resistance too. And we've struggled a lot with Odenton's identity. And I guess I'd just like to encourage the committee to keep advocating for the needs, desires, and vision for our community and our neighbors. It's okay to want great things for our town and neighbors and businesses, whether that comes in the form of parks or housing or businesses. It's okay to resist things that don't align with the intent of the master plan or that don't contribute or strengthen our community. It's okay to believe that Odenton can be a desirable destination for people to gather, to shop, to live, and to play. And it's okay to want both development and protection of the environment through sustainable practices and solutions. And it's okay to desire a higher standard of design and character in our buildings and our streetscapes here. I mean, ultimately, I'm excited and I'm optimistic about where Odenton is headed. And I hope to continue being a part of these meetings moving forward, and looking forward to seeing our community grow.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks, Andrew. Great words.
Don?
Yeah, I'm not gonna be as eloquent as that. It's been an interesting run. The way I characterize it, I'm getting fired from a volunteer job. So, but that's how I'm trying to leave my current job. I'm trying to get fired so I don't have to decide to retire. I've been I'm a little less centric on the Odenton Town Center since I live in southern Odenton. I don't relate to it as much, but I do think of Odenton as a whole, so I've been interested in helping it along. I have reached out to people in the community where I live to see if they had any input, never got anything back from them. But made some friends along the way, had some interesting stuff. I'm gonna be interested in continuing to watch what happens and what develops. Over.
Thanks, Don.
Thanks, Don. So I will say I'm going to miss both of your feedback on all these different items and discussions. So Andrew, you brought a great perspective in terms of design and architecture that we are going to miss because we don't have that. Dawn, you brought a history and different perspectives on how to approach the development for your questions over the years that often looking at the projects in a different perspective we hadn't thought of. So we're going to miss that as well. So thank you for everything both of you have done to help the OTCAC and Odenton move forward.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, so that is the end of item number 6. And so we go to general public comment. And so any of our attendees who are still here, if you have anything you'd like to say to the committee, now's your time. So just raise your hand. Okay. Oh, Jerry, okay.
Very simple. Is there any plans in the future for you to have an in-person meeting once again?
We do talk about that periodically to have it like once or twice a year, just because it's we have found that we get a lot more participation virtually than we do in person. But yes, there likely will be a discussion probably at the next meeting to talk about when we would like to have our second half of the year in-person session. Okay, thanks, Jerry. Any other comments? Okay, hearing none, that concludes our agenda. Any other final business from the committee?
Just want to thank you, Jason. It's been 3 hours and that's a lot of work. So thanks for staying with us.
It's that we had a busy agenda today. I knew this would be a long meeting.
Yeah. You did.
So, all right. So then without further ado, is there a motion to adjourn?
A motion.
Yes, making a motion.
All right. So
I've always wanted to say this. I vote nay for adjourning.
all right. So apparently Don has called for a recorded vote on adjourning for his final meeting.
Kidding.
All right. Thank you, everybody. If there's no opposition other than Don, I would say the ayes have it. All right. We stand adjourned 9:32. Thank you, everybody. Have a
Thanks,
great night.
everybody.
Thanks, everyone.